Let's talk about another thing that happened in my path to understanding Xyte. One of the things that helped me cross over from skepticism, you can't put people into boxes, into true agreement that there's value and validity in understanding what everyone's differing strengths are. What Xyte has been doing for a very long time, in the decade-long experience they've had developing these models, is they've been working with different communities of people. They've been working in the educational field. They've done a lot of work in personnel and interpersonal communications, as you might imagine, if you think about what Xyte's all about, that you can help people better communicate because you better understand how each other perceives information. Working with the incarcerated community, it's phenomenal to hear the stories about how folks that are in the incarcerated community discover, literally for the first time, that one, they're not alone, other people are like them, and that the strengths that they inherently have, which may be different than the strengths other folks have, were never identified and celebrated for them. And that's part of the reason they ended up where they ended up. Because they were told, as they went through schooling and everything else, that they were either different or behind or slow. They were different, but they were still valuable, and they still have strength, and they can still be very valuable and contributing members of society by finding jobs, by finding places to expend their energy that best fit with who they are as a person. For me, the thing that was really interesting was anybody who takes the Xyte profile, the first thing that they want to do is they want to have their significant other take it too. And I did that with my lovely bride, and turns out we have communication issues. It's very funny. The opposites attract scenario plays out in my household, but it's just interesting because we do communicate in different ways. Part of that is how we become a very good match in a parenting scenario, and our kids get very different things from each of us. The other thing that happens is when I had my eldest son take this, and my wife and he read their each individual profiles. He read what mom's was and mom read what his was. Though they don't necessarily truly admit this, there was a difference of tension because they're very different people. Who they are and how they perceive the world and what's important. My wife is very, let's get things done, let's get things moving, let's get the list complete. My son is much less that way. And by reading each other's profiles, I won't say it flipped their relationship 180 degrees, but each of them probably moved 10 or 15 degrees to understanding. And guess what? The relationship improved basically because there was better comprehension of why is he like that and why is she like that, right? And that's what's interesting for the parenting side of this, which is each of your kids are not the same. They each have different strengths. And how many Lifetime movies have you seen where, eventually at the end of the day, mom or dad comes around to, I should be supporting you in what you want to do instead of what I want you to do. It's a real truism that if the child finds something that they excel at, maybe they're a natural athlete, but if they're not, pushing them to be athletic is a disconnect, right? Maybe they really don't like to read. And expecting them to really force them to read, that sets up a little dissonance there. So everybody has strengths, and those strengths differ. And if we, as a society, as human beings, can discover the strengths that people have and give them the opportunity to utilize those strengths fully, whether it be directing your child into what he or she wants to do, finding a role for a person in your organization that you have in a role that's not necessarily the right fit, but giving them something else to do, and all of a sudden they blossom. Everybody has experienced these kinds of things. Well, the underlying reasons for that is part of the reason why Xyte, the company, exists. The goal there, how do we make people happier? Interesting goal. Because if you understand what it is that you're good at, what you like, and find yourself in a situation where you can leverage those strengths, what happens? You're happier, you're more productive, your life works better, and as a result, it works better for all of us. One thing we haven't talked about is some of the constructs underlying what the Xyte profiles are all about. One of them is really about physiological. Are you someone who is a body person in the sense that how your body responds. You kind of viscerally understand things. Other people are very much people that are very using their hands, crafting, musicians. There's this group of folks for whom that tactile sense is a very big part of how they perceive the world. Then there are folks like myself, verbal, and that's what it's oral, it's what comes into us. And then you've got folks in the mind row that are much more analytical and data-based and things of that nature, less of an emotional component to them. So part of what Xyte is helping people do and understand is how to best relate to the people that surround you in your communities and in your lives, whether that be a spouse, a child, an aunt, an uncle, an employee, whatever it happens to be. We all have a goal for better communication, whether it's implicit in what we're trying to set out to do running a company, or it's just, it'd be much better if she only understood me in a relationship, right? By understanding a little bit better how that person best takes information in, retains it, by understanding the way in which they need to hear things or perceive things or be told things so that they're better able to get your message, goes a long way to overcoming. I think it was Oscar Wilde who said the greatest flaw in communication is the assumption it's occurred. I think that might be the right quote. We could find that quote. But this notion of just because I said it doesn't mean you heard it. Just because I explained it doesn't mean you understood it. And if you can change the way in which you anticipate the other person's ability to understand, you can modify. This is not about changing who you are. This is about increasing the likelihood of being able to better communicate. Like we talked about on the advertising side of things, if the messaging is better, the retention and the willingness to engage is better. In interpersonal relationships, if you have a better comprehension of the people that you work with, the people that you engage with, and how they operate, you'll be less likely to say, he just drives me crazy, because you'll understand he's not trying to do that. It's just who he is. And he needs to see things in a different way than you do to understand and appreciate and get whatever the message is that you're trying to communicate.